She told jokes to comfort a troubled boy. What the millionaire CEO discovered next is amazing. Jack Thompson stood at the entrance of the local middle school, hesitating. His heart pounded against his chest while his palms felt clammy against the tailored fabric of his suit. The past few weeks had been an emotional whirlwind, returning to the small town where memories of his childhood danced uninvited in his mind. He was a millionaire CEO, yet here he was, unworthy of the success he had chased for so long. The laughter he'd once craved now felt uncomfortable, a distant echo of a boy who never belonged. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. The fluorescent lights flickered ominously as students filled the room, straining against the walls of neat desks. Jack was here to inspire, to be a beacon for those forging their paths ahead. But as he watched the anxious faces, his chest tightened. He imagined his father's skeptical gaze, taunting him for wasting time on such trivial pursuits. What did he know of dreams? What did comfort or laughter ever bring? The irony stung. He had everything, yet felt like nothing. Before he could shake off the weight of those thoughts, she entered. Lucy Green, a vibrant art teacher in a swirl of colorful scarves, immediately lit up the room. Her laughter bubbled through the air like a refreshing tonic, wrapping around the students. There was Tommy, a quiet boy, lost in the shadows of the classroom, his eyes filled with uncertainty. And there was Lucy, restless and determined, as she drew forth smiles from these troubled kids. Jack felt a twisted knot of recognition in his gut, remembering his own loneliness, how laughter felt forever out of reach as a child. Before he could process the scene, a surge of unease washed over him. In the back of his mind, he weighed his motives. Was he here to genuinely help, or was he merely attempting to soothe the ghosts of his past? Just then, laughter erupted from Tommy's corner. Lucy had spun yet another masterful joke. A pang of desire flooded Jack's body. What if he could channel some of that spirit? What if he could be someone else, someone better? Before he could dive deeper into that thought, moments passed, and the sound of laughter morphed into something darker. Challenges awaited, and the thought of them sent icy fingers up Jack's spine. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The weight of the room shifted dramatically as the final bell rang. The laughter that filled the space suddenly became a fluttering panic. A group of boys zeroed in on Tommy in the hallway. Jack felt every ounce of poise he'd built as an executive slip away. A surge of anger and protectiveness gripped him. In that moment, he could see his 10-year-old self in Tommy, the isolation, the self-doubt. Jack's heart raced as he hesitated, caught between the polished persona he projected and the buried boy, still yearning for acceptance. Would he step forward and be the man he wanted to be, or recoil into the shadows like he always had? The stakes elevated. From the clamoring voices of the bullies to his own spiraling thoughts, Jack was ensnared in a battle far more complex than he had ever envisioned. All he wanted was to reclaim a semblance of a father's approval and fulfill the obscure promise of a healing legacy. But confronting the lines of his life would mean dismantling everything he had built. As he stood paralyzed in that moment, the decisions looming over him felt insurmountable. Would his confronting the situation extract him from the shackles of success, or would he find his truth? Caught in that crossroad, Jack could not escape the shadows that chased him. What if change required more than just a show of courage? What if confronting the wrongs of his past meant facing his father, a man he had long sought to escape? The room darkened as the weight of realization pressed down, each pulse reverberating through his very core. The moment hung like a silent, thick fog, and Jack's mind raced. He could feel the pressure of the school's fluorescent lights buzzing above him. It was as if they illuminated more than just the space. They unveiled the stark contrast between the confident CEO he projected and the terrified boy he had once been. Facing Tommy's bullies was not just an act of bravery, it was the confrontation of a part of himself that he had long relegated to the shadows. As the taunts grew louder, Jack clenched his fists, the fabric of his suit crinkling under the tension. He took a step forward, heart hammering, asking himself bitter questions. Who was he really? Was he the successful business mogul driven only by profit? Or could he be the protector, the ally that he once needed? He realized at that moment that being a millionaire offered him no protection against the wounds of the past. Perhaps healing started with taking a stand. His pulse quickened as memories spiraled through his mind. Scenarios where he had watched others fight battles he wished he could join. That part of him screamed for action, but the voice of self-doubt echoed louder. Every failure, every time he had shied away from confrontation, amalgamated in an overwhelming swell of anxiety that threatened to swallow him whole. He was tired of the chains of inaction binding him to the past. Deep inside, a flicker of determination surged. Jack walked with an urgency that had him gripping his blazer to hide the trembling of his hands. As he drew near, he could see the fear in Tommy's eyes and the smug confidence of the bullies. Jack's throat tightened. He remembered not just his own pain but the moment when silence had been his worst enemy. He couldn't let this happen to another child. He couldn't allow fear to snuff out Tommy's flickering spirit. "Hey!" Jack's voice broke through the distance, firm yet unsteady. The lingering disbelief in their eyes was palpable as the bullies turned toward him. Could he really be a beacon of strength? "What's it to you, old man?" one of them spat, the bravado laced with thinly veiled worry. "I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of your cruelty." Jack's voice cut clearly through the air, backed by the weight of 100 pasts unacknowledged. "And I can tell you that it doesn't define you, but kindness and bravery will." Confusion rippled through the group, disbelief narrowing their eyes. There was a distinct stillness, the kind that held the potential for change. "You think you're the hero here?" Another bully scoffed, stepping forward threateningly. Jack measured the distance, the gravity of the confrontation settling heavily in his gut. Drawing in a deep breath, Jack focused on Tommy's small frame huddled against the cold locker. "No, it's not about being a hero. It's about understanding that we can choose who we want to be, even in painful moments. And I choose to stand up for what's right. So I ask you, who do you want to be?" A profound silence enveloped the hallway as the bullies exchanged glances that spoke volumes. Jack felt the ground shift beneath him, the challenge igniting a fire within him he hadn't felt in years. Maybe in this act, he could reclaim some part of the boy he had lost. With every heartbeat, he was reminded that his success came with a price, one he was willing to pay if it meant breaking the cycle of fear and isolation. But as the first signs of hesitation flickered in the bully's expressions, Jack also felt the specter of his father's judgment behind him, whispering doubts that begged for validation. It would be easy to falter, easy to slip back into the facade of status and power. What he didn't know was that in dedicating himself to standing up for others, he would inadvertently confront the very ghosts that had haunted him all this time. Would this moment fortify his resolve, or would the past collapse his efforts? As the tension thickened and Tommy looked up with hope, the answers loomed just out of reach, inviting him deeper into conflict. "Let's see how far you're willing to go, Jack," he murmured to himself, knowing this was just the beginning of a journey that might redefine him completely. A journey that might lead him to the confrontation with his father he had always avoided. The standoff seemed to stretch infinitely, the abrupt shift in energy leaving Jack suspended between past and present. Each heartbeat thundered in his ears, echoing the fear, the anger, the remorse he had buried for so long. The bullies wavered. He sensed their uncertainty, the chink in their bravado. In that moment, something primal awakened within him, a blend of anger and hope that coursed through his veins. Following his instinct, Jack felt his posture shift. He straightened his shoulders, an unconscious mimicry of the boardroom's dominance he had mastered, but now applied to something entirely different. This was not about strategies or profits. It was about humanity. It was about connection. "Think back," Jack urged, lowering his voice to a calmness that both challenged and beckoned. "What happened to you that made you believe this behavior was okay? We all have scars, but they don't have to become a family heirloom. You can choose to break the cycle. The words surfaced from a place he hadn't accessed in years, a part of his soul untouched by wealth or success, clawing for validation. He could see the cracks forming in the armor of their defiance. With his heart racing, Jack took a small, deliberate step closer. The huge gulf of memory between him and these boys felt momentarily bridged by vulnerability. You have a chance to grow beyond this, to apologize to Tommy and everyone you've hurt. You can choose to be better. The bullies exchanged anxious looks, and for the first time Jack saw uncertainty etched in their faces, in laced fingers and shifting eyes. The bravado, once so potent, started to dwindle. Jack pressed on, emboldened by their hesitance. Every time you hurt someone, you hurt yourself too. Is that who you want to be? The ebb of tension thickened as he watched their internal struggle unfold. At that moment he recognized the truth of leadership. Real leadership isn't merely about authority, it's about instilling empowerment in others, the strength to confront one's own demons. He was no longer just a businessman, he was a human being engaging with the essence of what shaped them all: pain, fragility, potential. Silence filled the gap, heavy with tempered possibility. He could feel Tommy's hopeful gaze on him, a light piercing the remnants of shame that clung to his past. In Tommy's spirit, Jack saw a reflection of what he could have been, had he learned to be his own advocate sooner. Suddenly, one of the boys muttered something under his breath. Maybe. The word hung in the air, tentative yet liberating. It was the beginning of something new, both for Jack and them. But before Jack could seize this flicker of breakthrough, they stumbled backwards, startled by the approaching crowd flooding the hallway. A teacher rushing in, breaking the spell. Jack's heart sank, the moment emotionally packed yet dislocated by the intrusion. But the impression had been made. He could feel it. The face of the chief bully had softened slightly, uncertainty lingering in the boy's eyes. Jack sensed he hadn't merely risen against a group, but had perhaps sparked the start of their transformation. As the teacher began to assess the commotion, Jack retreated. With a final glance at Tommy, who looked both relieved and invigorated, he turned away. The confrontation was over for now, but he knew deep down it had awakened something crucial within him. It became evident that confronting others' struggles invariably sparked profound reflections of his own. Back in the solitude of his car, Jack's discomfort re-emerged. The exchange replayed in his mind like a vivid reel. A thought bubbled to the forefront. This was merely the prologue. The confrontation he had begun would extend beyond a school hallway and into the deepest, most complicated corner of his life. His relationship with his father. He gripped the steering wheel, staring out into the distance. He could feel time folding in on itself, beckoning him to tackle a past he had so deftly avoided for too long. Next, he whispered to no one, it's time to face those demons. Jack turned the car off and sat in silence, the weight of his last encounter pressing heavily on him. Each inhale felt like inhaling memories, the bitterness of childhood mockery still fresh. Thoughts of his father began to swirl in his mind, forcing their way into the forefront of his consciousness like an uninvited guest. He pictured the man he had grown up idolizing, the imposing figure who seldom showed emotion, but always preached resilience. Yet within that memory lurked the relentless sting of disappointment. The moments he felt unworthy of his father's love because he didn't meet the expectations set before him. The parallels were undeniable. Just as he had confronted the bullies, Jack realized he needed to confront the figure that loomed over him, shaping his identity in ways he had started to resent. For years, Jack had avoided direct conflict with his father. His corporate success had become a shield, one he wielded to keep emotional upheaval at bay. But today felt different. He understood that in order to break his cycle, he needed to dismantle the barriers within himself first. The power to create change began internally, not externally. With renewed determination, he raised his phone and hesitated. Should he reach out? Fear clutched at his mind, threatening to undo his resolve. He remembered the vulnerability he had felt standing up to the bullies, how honesty had sparked connection when he had least expected it. Perhaps it was time to apply the same honesty in his familial relationships. "Dad," he finally typed, feeling his heart race. "We need to talk." The message seemed to flicker ominously on the screen, a small but powerful declaration that carried his apprehension as well as his intent. Almost immediately his thumb hovered over the send button, hesitation clawing at him. But the thought of remaining silent, trapped in a life defined by fear and expectation, pushed him forward. He pressed send. An eruption of nervous energy surged through him. He felt as though he had just stepped into a lion's den. The anxiety tightened like a noose around his chest as he leaned back in the seat, staring blankly at the windshield. What would his father say? Would he understand the urgency behind Jack's request? Would he even care to engage? As seconds morphed into minutes, Jack's mind raced through memories of terse conversations, cold dismissals, and fading camaraderie. A part of him prepared for rejection, but another latched onto a sliver of hope. Perhaps his father might recognize Jack's desire for authenticity. When the notification chimed moments later, Jack gripped the steering wheel tightly. It was his father. The message read, "What about?" Each word struck him like lightning. He wasn't going to get a walk in the park here. This would require his utmost courage. But perhaps that was the point. Jack leaned forward, heart pounding as he strategized his approach. How did he even begin to articulate the pain of his childhood? The disappointment he had carried? Slowly, a plan formed in his mind. What if he started by recounting a memory? A moment that both defined him and shaped their relationship. A day when he struggled with a project, and rather than encouragement, he received harsh criticism. Jack attempted to summon that childlike version of himself who needed support the most, the one who desperately sought approval yet felt nothing but judgment. On impulse, he started typing. "Remember the science project in 5th grade?" he began, the words flowing hesitantly yet deliberately. "I worked so hard on that, but when I presented it, you didn't show up. You said you had an important meeting, and though I tried to impress you, I felt invisible." His thumb hovered again over the send button, unsure whether he was in the midst of a breakthrough or merely opening old wounds. But he had come too far to turn back now. With an exhale that felt like years of pent-up tension, he pressed send. As he sat back, an unsettling mix of hope and fear took root in his gut. This felt like a turning point, each heartbeat syncing with the anticipation of a response. He was finally pushing through barriers that had held him captive for too long. But what if his father dismissed his feelings as mere folly? Jack took a deep breath, knowing that arriving at this moment was his victory, even if it was just the beginning. The decision he made to confront the past with honesty would ripple through every aspect of his life. Suddenly the phone buzzed again. He braced himself for the reply that could change everything. An entirely new tension filled the air, and for the first time in years, Jack felt the thrill of possibility, edging him toward a precipice of transformation. But the message that awaited him next held a weight he couldn't yet comprehend. The vibrations from his phone swelled in intensity, pulling Jack out of his spiraling thoughts. He lifted it slowly. The screen illuminated a response. "That was a long time ago. We've all moved on." The words landed like a rock in his stomach. Dismissal echoed between the lines, an impossibly familiar sting that resurfaced buried insecurities, echoes of inadequacy that dictated much of his adult life. The message felt like a rejection of everything Jack had sought to share, a continuation of the distance that had defined their relationship. But instead of crumbling, anger surged within him, weaving through the apprehension like a thread ready to snap. He questioned his instincts. Perhaps his father was right. A fleeting moment shouldn't weigh heavily on their ever-advancing lives. He was no longer that boy seeking approval. He was a successful adult. Yet the ache for acknowledgement resonated deeper than that. Jack took a moment to breathe. The emotional upheaval was fiery, but it ignited something within him. Ultimately, he refused to be reduced to a moment that was only the beginning of a long, unresolved story. What had he learned from years of confrontation? That resilience could evolve into something more powerful when fueled by honesty, especially with oneself. He realized he had an opportunity, not just to confront his father, but to confront himself. The continuation of this dialogue was essential. It needed to be more than a retrospective reflection on childhood memories. Jack decided to craft a response that would embody his journey and vulnerability, rather than defensiveness. "Dad," he typed again, "I want to talk about what that moment meant to me. It's not about judging the past, it's about understanding how it shaped my view of myself." The words felt heavy but necessary, each letter a step into a chasm he had been afraid to explore. He steadied himself, readying for the backlash or silence that might follow. Before he sent the message, Jack reflected on the skill sets he had developed through his time in the corporate world. Things he'd learned about managing difficult conversations, the art of persuasion, and clarity in communication. Each interaction taught him to redirect negativity into constructive dialogue. Why hadn't he applied this to his deepest emotional conflicts? With each passing second, the gravitational pull of inaction weighed on him. He pressed send, his pulse racing while a quiet anticipation enveloped him. Initially, there was silence. He leaned back against the worn upholstery, contemplating what his next steps might be if his father's response remained dismissive. More than ever before, Jack grasped the core of his transformation lay in his willingness to unearth buried truths, regardless of their initial reception. He had wrestled with corporate conflicts, led teams during critical negotiations, yet here he was, realizing the ultimate challenge lay in navigating emotional landscapes that could shake him to his core. In this brief but potent pause, a realization ignited. His connection with his father represented a microcosm of his broader relationships, personal and professional alike. He recognized that behind every leadership position or business success, the essential human element thrived on empathy, understanding, and the courage to face discomfort. As the phone buzzed again to life, Jack's heart raced. He read the new message. "Maybe we can talk. When were you thinking?" This shift was remarkable. Rather than shutting the door, his father seemed to open it just enough for possibility to creep in. Jack felt the tightness in his chest ease, but he also knew this was merely an invitation to delve deeper, an opportunity to confront not just his father, but the fear that had always shrouded their relationship. He had taken the first step. Now, the journey awaited. With a newfound sense of purpose coursing through him, Jack began to type, setting the stage for not just a dialogue, but a genuine connection that could potentially redefine years of estrangement. What would this conversation unveil? How much vulnerability was required to break through to the other side? He could feel it, the precipice of transformation. Yet deep inside, another thought loomed larger. What if this only scratched the surface of their issues? Would he be ready for the fallout? As his fingers moved across the screen, he braced himself, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. After all, the moment had come to face everything he had long avoided. Jack's mind raced as the words scrolled across the screen. An invitation to dialogue felt like a fragile lifeline woven with uncertainty. Before he could overthink the magnitude of what lay ahead, he typed a tentative response, proposing the upcoming Saturday for their meeting. Each keystroke cascaded from his fingertips like a performance on stage, one he had rehearsed in the solitude of his own thoughts. After hitting send, he busied himself with work, though his attention felt splintered. The hum of the office fell into a rhythm behind the clatter of keyboards and muted calls, but Jack was miles away. Memories of Saturday mornings spent in perfunctory silence tugged at him, jaw tight around cereal bowls, the weight of unspoken words thick in the air. A glossing over of emotions had been their modus operandi. Could Saturday be different? Days trickled by, marked by fleeting glances at his phone as he braced for any sign of life from his father. Anxiety pooled in his gut, urging him to reconsider. But the very thought of turning back lit another flame, one that reflected his growth into a new, bolder version of himself. It was reminiscent of the strategic risks he had taken at his company, often reaping unexpected rewards amid daunting uncertainty. When Saturday finally dawned, Jack donned his best suit, a tactile reminder of the professional facade he had mastered. As he approached the restaurant 2 hours early, he couldn't help but replay scenarios in his mind. Would his father deflect? Minimize his concerns? Or worse, would Jack endure another wave of rejection? He paced the exterior, the sunlight battling with clouds, mirroring the turmoil within him. Sitting at the polished table, he fidgeted with the cufflinks his mother once gifted him, a small talisman of encouragement. He took a deep breath, gathering strength from the realization that he had walked into boardrooms unprepared before, yet emerged each time with a clearer vision. This was no different. The stakes were just personal, and perhaps that made them feel even higher. As his father entered the restaurant 10 minutes late, Jack stood, forcing a smile that sat uncomfortably on his lips. The man who approached looked weary, eyes lined with the weight of years steeped in silence. Jack invited him to sit, the awkwardness greeting them both like a long-lost friend. "Thanks for coming," Jack started, voice steady despite the tempest swirling inside. "I didn't want to keep you waiting," his father replied, scanning the menu, not yet meeting his gaze. The conversation twisted and turned like an unpredictable current as they touched upon trivialities: work, weather, the Raiders' latest game. Yet each sidestep felt like a dance around the very truths they both needed to confront. Jack questioned his impulse to rush into deeper waters immediately. Was it more intentional to ease in? Finally, unable to bear the levity any longer, Jack took a leap. "Dad, can we talk about the moment? The one we both know shaped so much of our relationship?" A charged silence stretched between them, airy yet suffocating. Jack's heart raced. Vulnerability poured through his veins. This was the critical moment. The act of revealing himself threatened to expose the rawness buried beneath the surface, yet he felt a glimmer of something like empowerment in that honesty. His father finally looked up. "You really want to unpack that?" The invitation had transformed. The expression on his father's face no longer a shield but a glimpse at the man beneath the armor. Jack felt a swell of hope. Hope that perhaps this conversation could give rise to something unforeseen, an opportunity to rewrite an enduring narrative. "More than anything," Jack responded, "I think it's time we began to understand each other." But as the discussion began to crack open those long-held layers of their past, uncertainty loomed in Jack's mind. Would his father accept the truths they both avoided? Would the exploration of pain breathe new life into the path they'd been forging together, or would it spiral into confrontation? Jack's trepidation bubbled underneath his calm facade. With every ounce of conviction, he asked, "Can we really move on if we don't look back?" The answer hung in the air, a silent precipice from which their relationship might either take flight or plunge deeper into shadows. Would this moment of truth bring them closer, or drive them further apart? As the words sat, waiting for response, Jack felt the weight of his own aspirations colliding with reality, a clash he was finally ready to face. Jack held his breath as he awaited his father's response, the tension stretching like taut steel. Time seemed to slow. The noise of the restaurant faded into an enveloping silence. He could see the flicker of contemplation in his father's eyes, as if he was weighing the benefit of exposing their shared history against the risk of shattering the delicate peace they had maintained for so long. "Maybe you're right," his father finally said, the resignation in his voice settling heavily around them. "That day, it was hard for both of us." Each word felt like a tremor, sending ripples across the surface of Jack's composure. The acknowledgement had always been the missing piece, an unspooled thread that connected them, frayed and fragile. The resolve it took to voice that discomfort felt monumental, yet it breathed life into the stagnant air of their long-standing standoff. "What was it like for you?" Jack dared to pivot the question, pushing against the boundaries he had set just moments before. His father leaned back, crossing his arms defensively, but not without a glint of reflection in his gaze. "It wasn't just one thing, Jack. Sometimes things happen and you don't know how to fix it. I thought you'd be better off if I stayed quiet." Jack's stomach twisted at the thought. The years of silence framed as protection, a misguided strategy that had only bred distance. The interchangeability of quiet and absence resonated painfully within him. "You think I wanted that? Just a void where a dad should be?" The sharpness of his words surprised even himself. But his passion, once ignited, took flight. It soared to confront the years of pent-up resentment and longing he had carried. The facade he had constructed to mask vulnerability wavered, revealing the yearning for connection, for understanding, for forgiveness. I didn't want to be just a sudden presence either, his father shot back, defensiveness creeping into his tone. The truth, it doesn't fix everything. He stared intently now, as if searching Jack's face for a confrontation he had been long conditioned to win. No, it may not fix everything, Jack conceded, the words cracking like ice beneath the weight of truth. But it's a start, isn't it? We can't go back and change what happened, but, his father echoed, frustration bubbling to the surface. But honesty between us could mean something new. I can't carry the burden of what you never said, and I don't want you to be alone with it anymore. Jack spoke, feeling an unexpected strength swell within him. With each revelation he recognized his own evolutionary path. He had spent too long in silence, shackling himself to the unspoken truths that defined their fractured relationship. Jack could see the walls around his dad's heart falter, but the man was not yet willing to step outside. The flicker of vulnerability might only be a candle's light in a storm. What if we try to talk about it? Not just today, but regularly. Once a week, if necessary. It's not about fixing it all at once, but building something new brick by brick. For a moment his father merely blinked, eyes clouded with confusion and a rush of indignation that felt familiar. But beneath it, Jack glimpsed the flicker of possibility, a longing mirrored in his own heart. If that's what you really want. It is, Jack affirmed, the conviction in his voice resolute. I think it's time we take this leap together. You've carried your burdens for long enough. Maybe we can find a way to share them. The weight of the conversation hung over them like a charged atmosphere before a torrent. Jack sensed that they were at a turning point, teetering on the edge of profound change. As they continued to troubleshoot the intricate layers of their past, doubt began to seep back into Jack's heart. Would they truly be able to navigate through the uncharted waters of honesty together? Or was this a reckless gamble? Jack took a breath, anticipating the barrier that loomed before them. The urgency of the unknown both excited and terrified him. Can you promise to meet me halfway? His father's silence filled the air with an array of unspoken emotions. The moment hung delicately, poised to either shatter or reshape their dynamic. Jack braced himself for whatever came next, realization dawning that the enlightening journey had only just begun. And perhaps hidden within those shadows lay the very answers he sought. Would they dare to confront the truths that defined them? Would this new commitment forge a path to something wholly unforeseen? As the hum of conversations resumed around them, Jack felt an invisible tether forming between him and his father, one that stretched taut with the potential of being pulled tighter. The silence was a fragile truce, pregnant with questions, fears, and the latent hope for healing. Jack couldn't help but think that they were two pieces of a larger puzzle. Complex, imperfect, but together capable of revealing a clearer picture. The very air in the restaurant felt electric, like the aftermath of a thunderstorm where the world is still but alive with possibility. Jack forced a smile, trying to mask the uncertainty bubbling within him. So, how do we start? He asked, prompting his father to break the silence, the invitation hanging between them like a lifeline. His father shifted in his seat, fingers drumming nervously against the table. Well, I suppose we could reflect on the past a bit more, share what we've learned through it. I could start with the day you— No, Jack interrupted, raising a hand in a gesture that was both pleading and firm. Let's not dwell on the pain right now. Let's focus on what we want for ourselves, what we want moving forward. The line of his father's jaw tightened, and Jack recognized the apprehension in his gaze. Jack's heart pounded at the weight of the moment. Could they truly evade the demons of their past to create something meaningful? What do you want, Jack? His father asked quietly, almost as if searching for a taut thread he might hold on to. I want to understand you, Jack said, feeling the words resonate in the air like ripples in a pond. But I also want you to understand me. It's time for clarity within this chaos. With those words, Jack conjured the image of his professional life, a world where misunderstanding could lead to failure and despair. In his career as a product manager, clarity and transparency were paramount for success. And yet here he was, grappling with emotional obscurity in the one relationship that mattered most. The realization struck him like a lightning bolt. Honesty needed to permeate all aspects of his life, or it risked erasing the delicate line he walked between personal and professional growth. Every great project begins with a blueprint, Jack continued, steadying his breathing. What can we construct together? What outlines do you picture when you think of us moving forward? His father's face softened a fraction, eyebrows knitting in contemplation. It was a small opening, but Jack grasped it like a life raft in turbulent waters. He was starting to sense the biases and veils that had masked their past could indeed give way to transparency, if only both parties committed. I think, if I'm honest, I've been scared of what comes next, his father admitted, the admission cracking the barrier further. I want to be there for you, but I don't know how. Jack nodded, empathy flooding through him. Then let's learn together. We can share our fears and goals like developing a new product. Iteratively with testing and adjustments. We're learning how to be in a relationship for the first time. The metaphor struck a chord, and Jack watched curiosity ignite in his father's eyes. Inspiration sparked like fire, revealing possibility amid uncertainty. Here, in this moment of vulnerability, lay an opportunity for both to engage in open dialogue, another step along the path of their evolution as father and son, partners in a lifelong project that needed nurturing. I've always wanted to be better for you, Jack. It's just, being a parent is much harder than I ever imagined, his father confessed, a shadow crossing his expression. Jack recognized that admission as a sign of progress. If we both commit to this honesty, you'll find I can be better as well, Jack replied, feeling emboldened by his father's willingness to lean into discomfort. It's all about iterating and refining what it means to be us. Time hung suspended around them, holding its breath in anticipation of the transformation that might unfold. Jack could feel the walls around his heart crumbling, laying bare the contours of his desire for acceptance and connection. But as they voyaged deeper into this shared landscape of truth, the weight of the past loomed. Each revelation presented a new challenge to navigate. Could they maintain their newfound commitment amidst the trials that awaited? Jack's pulse quickened as he faced the daunting question. He realized they were teetering on the brink of redefinition. What would honesty bring to their relationship, and could they navigate through the complexities all while maintaining their newfound path of understanding? Before Jack could voice another thought, his phone buzzed on the table, pulling his attention sharply back to the present. The screen lit with an all-too-familiar name, his boss. What now? What could possibly need his immediate attention at this moment? Jack glanced at his father, a swirl of emotions churning within him, progress mixed with apprehension. Would this distraction steer him back into familiar chaos, or propel him into a future he had only dared to imagine? The time had come to confront another aspect of his life, where every choice branched into a myriad of risks and rewards. As he reached for the device, Jack felt a tension knot in his gut. Would the choices he made not only reshape his relationship with his father, but also impact his professional journey? Only time would tell. Jack's heart raced as he swiped to answer the call from his boss, the sudden shift from intimacy to corporate urgency leaving him disoriented. Hello? He managed, forcing himself to sound composed, even as uncertainty gnawed at his insides. Jack, I need you on a project deadline early next week. We're not satisfied with the current direction, his boss's voice echoed, a blend of authority and impatience. I'd like your updated strategy by tomorrow. The gravity of the demand loomed over him, heavy and unyielding. Sure, I can do that, he replied, the words spilling out like air rushing from a punctured tire. This wasn't just about meeting a deadline. It felt like another layer of pressure added to the already charged atmosphere with his father across the table. As he hung up, a flurry of thoughts collided in his mind. Why now? Was this an unexpected test? A way to gauge where he stood with his work-life balance? He glanced back at his father, who wore an expression of concern mixed with understanding. Is everything okay? He asked softly, grounding Jack back in the moment. I just need to prepare a strategy for work, Jack admitted, feeling the walls he had worked to lower begin to rise again. There's a project I have to fix, something my team isn't satisfied with. His father nodded, recognizing the toll this tug-of-war had on Jack. You seem torn, he stated flatly, but not without empathy. What's bothering you the most? Jack took a breath, using this moment to pull together his scattered emotions. It's like, I want to prioritize you this conversation, yet I can't shake off my obligations at work. It makes me question if I can truly handle both worlds. A flicker of realization crossed his father's face. You shouldn't have to choose between them. Have you shared what you're feeling with your team? He hadn't. The idea hit him squarely. In his quest to juggle both personal and professional expectations, he forgot the core of collaboration. No, I usually just dive in and hope for the best, Jack confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. Maybe that's where you're going wrong, his dad replied, his tone becoming more encouraging. Home and work are both demanding. You should be honest about your challenges in both areas. People tend to rally when they see transparency. Jack furrowed his brow, absorbing the lesson. His father had revealed a truth that resonated deeply. Just as he had suggested earlier in their conversation, growth comes from honesty and doing it together. Perhaps he wasn't just navigating this relationship alone, but also this tangled web of work expectations. You might be right, Jack said, the admission stirring thoughts of how he had compartmentalized his life. I need to connect with my team, see if they share in this struggle. His father leaned in, visibly proud. Try framing your message as a collaboration, he encouraged. You can reinforce your team as a unit that yields better results when working together instead of continuously racing against time. Delegation builds strength. This is just like us working through our past. The words sparked a flicker of motivation within Jack. As he absorbed this new perspective, the earlier tension began to recede, transformed into a sense of possibility. You're right, he exclaimed, feeling a rush of determination. I'll call a team meeting, get everyone's input, and figure out how we can approach this together. In that moment, Jack realized the dual revelation. Just as he needed to mend his ties with his father, professionally, he needed a new strategy built on teamwork, rather than isolation. The walls around his responsibilities were starting to crack, allowing light to seep in. As gratitude washed over him, he focused back on his father, the newfound connection feeling more significant. Yet the notion of his professional life loomed, a balance still yet to be struck. I appreciate what you're sharing, Dad. But how do I maintain this if new demands come crashing down again? His father's brows knitted in thought. Perhaps you need to create your own set of structures or boundaries. Define what you're willing to carry individually. Jack's eyes lit up, another epiphany dawning on him. Structures, boundaries, they could be applied liberally, extending beyond the professional into the personal, merging the two. Think about what matters most to you in each arena and how they can coexist. Getting clarity is key, his father stated, driving the message home. Feeling the weight of both his professional life and personal relationship unfurl before him, Jack realized he stood at the precipice of a transformative choice. He was concluding one cycle and gearing up for the next, a blend of collaborative efforts at home and in the workplace. Would he finally be able to construct the product of his life with purpose and intent? The phone's buzz was an abrupt reminder of the ticking clock, pressing him to act. Jack grasped it tightly, his heart racing. He knew he had lessons to unfold in the professional setting, and the first step was to embrace this moment of uncertainty. But another nagging question filled his mind. Was he ready for the changes this newfound wisdom would require? The balance of addressing his father and his work situation was just the tip of the iceberg. What other conflicts beneath the surface would demand his attention next? Jack reflected on the weight of the past few weeks, the emotional turbulence of reconnecting with his father, while simultaneously managing the relentless demands of his workplace. Yet, amidst the complexity of these dual challenges, clarity began to crystallize. In the days following their remarkable conversation, Jack leveraged the strategies he learned from his father to foster open communication with his team. Instead of handling the project alone, he gathered everyone for a meeting. Let's discuss our challenges, he proposed, his voice steady, echoing newfound confidence. Many heads are better than one, and I believe we have the potential to tackle this collectively." The response was overwhelming. His colleagues shared their insights and concerns, transforming what once felt like a solitary battle into a collaborative endeavor. Fresh perspectives emerged, and by recognizing their combined strength, they redefined their approach to the project. Jack felt a flicker of pride illuminate his spirit. The interaction had not only invigorated the team's morale, but also manifested something he had long yearned for: a sense of belonging. As deadlines approached, Jack remained steadfast in his commitment to the delicate balance between his professional and personal relationships. With each passing day, he found joy in his newfound honesty with his father, the moments shared, allowing a gradual but meaningful rebuilding of trust. They kept their commitment to weekly conversations, exploring their histories while facing the truths that had once drove them apart. Jack realized that being vulnerable had not weakened him, but rather reinforced their bond and forged an avenue for real growth. This burgeoning relationship urged Jack forth, paralleling his determination in the workplace. He became adept at delegating responsibilities and leaning on others' capabilities. When the time finally arrived for the project presentation to upper management, he felt a sense of purpose fueling his steps. The supportive environment he nurtured with his team was palpable. Together, they showcased their innovative approach, demonstrating adaptability while intricately weaving in their collective insights. As he stood before the boardroom, Jack's heart swelled. With each slide that flickered onto the screen, he saw faces reflecting approval, nods of understanding resonating in the room. "This was built through collaboration," he stated, eyes glittering with resolve. "When function meets connectedness, we can achieve more than what we could accomplish individually." The presentation ended with thunderous applause, an unmistakable validation of success and growth. Each member of his team received acknowledgement for their contributions, and Jack, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment, was even applauded for his leadership. That evening his phone lit up with congratulatory messages and accolades rolling in from colleagues and superiors alike. Yet it was the text from his father that truly resonated. "I'm proud of you, Jack. You've come a long way." These few words, devoid of expectations, encapsulated a wealth of understanding. The hesitance that had once filled their relationship replaced by respect and acknowledgement. Jack realized that he had not only stepped into the role of a competent leader, but had also emerged as a son, willing to hold space for a relationship that had once felt unyielding. In confronting his past and choosing to dismantle it with empathy, he had also radically changed his trajectory towards healing, a true testament of personal growth. This newfound confidence surged through his core. Jack stood at a junction in his life, embracing the future shapeful with possibilities. He felt a steadfastness grounding him, a clarity that propelled him toward his genuine aspirations. The laughter he had long lost began to resonate within him once more, a joyful undertone accompanying every interaction, be it with a colleague or a loved one. Jack emerged from the tempest, ready to embrace what lay ahead, knowing that the choices he made defined not just who he became professionally, but who he was as a man. He felt privileged to merge his past with his present, stepping forth equipped with the best tool of all, vulnerability. And through it all, in moments of laughter shared with his father or collaboration celebrated at work, he finally articulated the promise that had echoed in his soul. He chose connection over isolation and humanity over ambition. As the waves of satisfaction enveloped him, immersed in this profound transformation, Jack Thompson stepped into a future filled with brighter horizons, accomplished and recognized, finally at peace with himself and the journey he had taken. Now this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.